Zombies are probably one of the biggest subgenres of horror films, and as it's coming up to Halloween, there's a whole bunch of films to watch. I've decided to review a lesser-known film called Zombie Transfusion, or Automation Transfusion. I suppose they dropped the automation part to replace it with zombie for the European crowds, for a wider demographic, or maybe to actually let people know that this isn't about motorized blood transfusions. Anyway, the title kinda sucks, so Zombie Transfusion is. We open in a medical institute, or a morgue, where a young orderly promptly brings in a dead body and then throws up into a bio-waste bin. Now, I don't know if this is the first guy's day on the job, or if he's just not really good at the job, but if you start throwing up every time you brought a dead body in, you shouldn't really be in that job. The doctor tells the orderly to clean up and go home. We then cut to the worst orderly in the world mopping up and hears a noise. Of course he goes to investigate, gets pulled into the morgue door and gets his back snapped like some kind of twig.
Ooh, nasty.
After the title sequence, we're introduced to American High School Music Volume 3, just to let the audience know that we're actually at an American high school. We're introduced to our three plucky young heroes: Chris, the archetypal stoner leader guy, Scott, the token black guy, and Tim, the sexually repressed geek. We're also introduced to the antagonist of the story, the stereotypical jock, who throws down with Tim and Scott.
What's your problem, Lance?
My problem is you know you're not supposed to be talking to my girl.
We'll talk to whoever we goddamn please.
They'll talk to whoever they please, guys. That's what they're gonna do. Yeah, just watch. Let's go.
Ooh, sick burn.
God, I'd like to fuck up that kid's day.
I'd like to drive a chainsaw right through his face.
Whoa, Scott, calm down. I don't know, G, do you think that'll be something that comes up later on in the storyline?
Where the hell?
You're trying to get up going, aren't
It's here that we're introduced to Chris, who, instead of wanting to have sex with his girlfriend, stops mid-boner to talk about a party that everyone's going to.
Come on, Hooker, let's go back to class.
Just call me.
Good going, Chris. It's at this point where one of the classmates has a severe case of irritable bowel syndrome and decides to chomp on one of the teacher's necks. After a stretcher is pulled out, Scott flat out punches the guy in the face after he seems to be frothing at the mouth. But everyone seems to go about their daily business afterwards, like nothing's ever happened. As you would. And where are the other teachers at this point? Ooh, boom pole in the shot, guys. Jackie and her dippy cheerleader friends go off to the party of the century while we discover that the doctor from the earlier intro sequence is in fact Chris's dad, who promptly gets eaten 2 minutes after Chris has left the house. I guess Chris left the door open or something. Chris, Tim and Scott make their way downtown to watch a band while everyone else at the school attends a party. A girl pulls up outside the rave house, no more than 50 feet away from audible distance, and gets horribly mutilated, but no one seems to care or notice her screams for help. Meanwhile, the three musketeers sense that something's not quite right, as there's no other traffic on the road. They seem even more unsettled as they pull up to the bar, but get out anyway because, well, plot development, I guess.
Fuck it.
What the hell is that noise?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Hang on a second. Why are they standing still for so long before the zombies come around the corner? In the previous shot, there was nothing there. And then suddenly there's just hundreds of zombies rushing towards them. It makes no sense. Things look bad for our heroes as they barricade themselves in the bar for shelter, and it probably doesn't help that the bartender has just 2 days left before retirement. Meanwhile, back at the party, everything's gone a bit Ron Burgundy.
Are you okay? I'm gonna punch you in the ovary. That's what I'm gonna do. A straight shot.
Ooh, ow.
Right to the baby maker.
Lance the Jock is getting freaky upstairs with his girlfriend, but gets interrupted by a zombie, who proceeds to give her a mouth blast that she'll never forget. He then gets eaten. The boys escape with the bartender. Oh, did you hear about the joke with the guy that walks into a bar with a shotgun? Uh-oh. Never mind. Chris and the guys travel back to the party to rescue his girlfriend, where he bumps into his undead dad and helps him check for glaucoma in his eye. Actually, this reminds me of another zombie film. They find a girlfriend and escape the house to find themselves in a barn.
It's less than a mile.
How the hell do we get past them all? There's hundreds out there.
I have no idea.
I smell a montage sequence. Our A-Team crew, now fully equipped with weapons of mediocre destruction, decide to Braveheart-style rush into the crowd of zombies. Remember the line earlier from Scott about wanting to chainsaw that guy in the face? Well, yeah, you can kind of guess the rest. Tim decides to Starsky and Hutch away from the rest of the group, only for a few seconds later to fall out of the car. I don't know why this happens. We next see Tim in a lake, only to be pulled under by a zombie. A few tense moments pass by, but he reappears. Minus his legs. There's obviously zombie sharks now in the water. Chris, Scott and Jackie return to the school in the vain hope that they'll be rescued. We also follow one of Jackie's dippy cheerleader friends for a while, but that doesn't have much relevance to the plot. Predictably, the school gets overrun. Scott loses his shit upon discovering that Tim didn't make it, and for no discernible reason, decides to make a last-ditch stand with his chainsaw. I really think the guy has a chainsaw fetish or something. So of course Scott gets killed, the dippy cheerleader friend takes a plummet into the swimming pool, and our last two survivors get a helping hand from the ceiling. Turns out the janitor, who until this point we've never met before in the film, gives a lengthy piece of exposition about how the zombies were created. I've sped up the conversation as it seems to go on forever. Apparently 30 years ago, experiments were conducted on reanimated corpses for the Vietnam War to produce super soldiers. Chris's dad and the janitor were stationed there to oversee the proceedings and if the experiments were controllable. Chris and Jackie are told by the janitor that there's a serum to prevent them from being turned into a zombie at the local morgue where Chris's dad works.
You got balls, kid. If you think you can make it, take my Jeep. Here.
Chris and Jackie travel to the morgue only to discover that the serum isn't there. They're greeted by a guy wearing a black hazmat suit who simply asks the question, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" when Jackie decides to wallop him over the head with the baseball bat. Chris stabs him in the neck with some scissors and they flee the place, only to be greeted by more undead. They turn back only to discover that the door they just came out of is now locked. Chris tells Jackie to hold on and, cocking the shotgun, the scene cuts to a title card saying, "To be continued." And that's how the film ends. Apparently the director, Stephen C. Miller, planned a trilogy of these zombie films, and allegedly the sequel is being produced. To conclude, the film seems more like a student project than a finished article. For a low-budget, independent film, some of the gorier scenes are quite well delivered, but don't expect any award-winning performances here. Zombie Transfusion has a tendency to imitate rather than innovate. Angles on the camera work are quite well chosen, and overall, the film has quite an energetic feel to it. Zombie Transfusion was shot on mini DV and then reframed, so the biggest problem being the intermittent motion glitches that produce a pronounced stutter on the camera. This one's only for the hardcore zombie fan.
Fuck it.